Hi, everyone. So, like anyone out there that has great taste in television, you've probably also seen the season 2 finale of Severance. And I want to talk a little bit about this episode because it has absolutely emotionally wrecked me. It has broken me. And it is one of the best finale episodes I've ever seen. And just such a heartbreaking end to this season. If you haven't seen it yet, please go watch it. Do not listen to me talk about it because you have to experience it. It is just absolutely phenomenal. And Ben Stiller has quickly skyrocketed to like one of my favorite people ever because he directed this finale episode. He's also producing the show. He's had a very active role in the entirety of the story from start to finish. And a lot of times when you see shows they have ongoing seasons, they will start it with a producer, they'll start it with their big name director, and then it'll get shoved off to little other showrunners, other directors who take it in whatever direction. But Ben Stiller has been there. Him and I was going to call him Mark Scout. Him and Adam Scott do a podcast where they talk about the filming and behind the scenes and whatnot. I haven't listened to the podcast yet, but I probably should. But I just have so much respect for Ben Stiller for seeing this story to beginning to end. Hopefully this is not the end. My God, I will take however many seasons of Severance they throw at us because I absolutely am enamored with this universe. But I want to specifically talk about this finale episode because there was a lot of discussion I saw online about some theories and some speculation about it and some mixed emotions about the ending. So I just want to say the ending to this episode, just like, I'm probably going to tear up as I talk about it because it's just that emotional, but it just absolutely emotionally wrecked me. And I knew very early on that someone was going to get hurt. At least one person. Now, multiple people were going to get hurt no matter what outcome. 2 people are going to get hurt, 2+ people. Because it's just, you can't have Mark Scout and Mark S both get what they want. Reintegration does not help anybody. One, Helena Egan, she's never going to be reintegrated. Helly R effectively is going to always die in this scenario. So Mark S is never going to get to have Helly R. Mark Scout, as of course, I was the episode, Gemma's episode, was some of the best directed, artistically filmed, beautiful. Just that was one of the most beautiful episodes of any television show I've ever seen. Those transitions were just gorgeous. But after that episode, I turned to my husband and I told him, I said, I'm going to throw up if they don't rescue Gemma. Like, they have to get Gemma out of there. Once you saw what Lumen was doing to her, it was so incredibly evil and beyond what you would expect for Lumen. So of course I wanted Mark to rescue Gemma and get her out of there. But then you have this complication that Mark S is dead. And that's the option. Mark Scout rescues his wife and gets her out of there, and Mark S dies because the reintegration, as Mark S pointed out to Mark Scott, that's not going to help him live his life. You know, he's got his own memories. He's in love with Heliar. He's made friends in Lumen, and his innie's life is so enriched in that way. So I knew from the start when they were having that back and forth conversation in the cabin, which, by the way, was such a creative. I absolutely loved the way that conversation went back and forth between the two of them. Also, there's so much hidden details in every single one of these episodes. I feel like I could do a breakdown about everything, but this conversation between Mark and his Annie, you see very early on from the way that goes that it's not going to have the desirable effect. So I'm going to go all the way to the end because there was people were very confused and upset about Mark's decision here, that any Mark, leaving Gemma on the outside of the door and then running to Helly R, and then the two of them running down the hall together. And this is a heartbreaking scene because Gemma has been tortured. I mean, she's got at least 25 innies, and they all are put in these traumatic, they're all created to basically just torture her in different ways. And now she sees what is ultimately the worst torture, not even by Lumen's hand. Well, yes, by Lumen's hand because of Mark's entire creation. But for her to be on the other side of the door begging him to turn around and be with her, and like her not understanding and even knowing what's going on right now, just like, okay, my heart broke for her all over again because this woman cannot catch a break. I am hoping season 3, please Ben Stiller, deliver. I am hoping Gemma is like the protagonist of season 3, and then we're going to get to see her fall into this role where she goes into Lumen. Gemma, Devin, and Miss Cobell teaming up together and going to destroy Lumen wasn't on my bingo card, but I will take it there. So, this scene though was so heartbreaking because you know that Mark S and Helly R want to live, and Helly gives this great speech right, earlier in this episode where she's standing up on the table and she says they gave us half a life and expected us not to fight for it. And that's such a powerful scene because as the contrast between Helly in this final episode and Helly in season 1, where she literally tries to hang herself because she's like, you know what, screw my Audi, I'm going to get rid of my innie and it'll get rid of her up there. Mark and Helly choosing to run for, whatever time they have left, just going through the hallways in Lumen. I just started bawling my eyes out because it was such a heartbreaking decision for him. He chose to stay behind and have what little time he has left with Helly, not knowing when would be their last moment. If he's going to die, he's going to spend his last moments with Helly. So, this was such a heartbreaking scene. And then having Windmills of Your Mind play in the background, it was very evocative of like classic, I was thinking classic films where they have those endings where very melancholy, you don't really know what comes next, but you get the implication that it's only going to be a happy ending up until a certain point, right? And so that was exactly what this was. And the film grain that they used in this scene was reminiscent of the same grain that they used in Gemma's episode with all the flashbacks with her and Mark. Even the way the camera's like panning in, that just feels like a 1970s film right there. It was so beautifully done. And of course, Ben Stiller directed this particular, I'm so glad he directed the finale too, because he has the vision. In the after credits where they're talking about the scene, where is it? I was trying to get to, Ben Stiller says that they're basically running off into the sunset and they're not thinking, no, we're not watching Ted Lasso. Thank you. They're not thinking more than 10 seconds ahead, right? They're just taking the time that they have. And I saw some confusion about people upset that Mark was running off with Helly. Like, what are you doing? What? Gemma was right there at the door. But Mark S. doesn't know Gemma. He doesn't love Gemma. That's not his life. And so his decision, and actually even before he decides to see Helly, or he turns around to see Helly, So this scene is right when Mark pushes Gemma through the door, and the plan is they go through the fire escape together and then they're out. Mark has a hesitation to do that, and it's not even it. This wasn't a I'm choosing Gemma versus Helly situation for Mark. As you can see, his hesitation to open that door because he knows it effectively ends his life. And um he gives this nod to Gemma, like, okay, yeah, no, I'm coming. That sort of like, yeah, okay, we're going along with the plan. And watch his reaction. So he pushes Gemma out the door and she is unsevered. And she turns around and is telling him to come. And he hesitates. And he gives this, you could see that low, like, oh, yeah, okay, I know what I have to do. He hesitates because he knows that's the end of his life. It's not in this moment that, like, I'm choosing Helly over Gemma. It's, I'm going to die, and I'm not ready to die. And so you can't really even blame him for wanting to live. He's not had a life, and this life that he does have means so much to him. And then when Helly comes, this was another thing I saw people saying, where people said they had a theory that this wasn't Heliar. They thought this was Helena, and that how they switched Helly off and Helena on during the excursion. They did the same here. And so this is really Helena and it's not Helly. People think that this might be Helena because of this, quote, evil smirk she gives Gemma. And that's the look right there. But look at this next scene. Okay. She's horrified. She's looking back horrified at Gemma. It's kind of just like this, I'm so sorry. Okay, maybe horrified is too strong, but she's looking like, I'm so sorry. It's sort of a, I don't know what to do sort of look. Okay, so this is the look that people have said is an evil smirk. That is not an evil smirk. This woman is sad, and she knows what Gemma has been through. This is not the face of Helena. This is like a heartbroken look. She's going to die. I feel I hurt for all of these characters, but Helly R is never ever going to have the chance that Mark S might have had with the reintegration had they even figured out a way to do that. But yeah, this is not Helena. This is Helly R, and this is not an evil smirk. This is a woman who's that's like a sorrowful look. So it was just it was such a heartbreaking episode. And if the show for whatever reason doesn't get a third season, I do think this is effectively a good ending. But please, God, please let us get a third season. But I will be satisfied. I mean, it was just so well done because of the implication that Gemma's safe. Mark Scout will eventually, they're going to capture these two and put him on an elevator, and him and Gemma will be reunited. So it either way, I kind of feel like it's a happy ending for Mark Scout and Gemma. And then Mark S and Helly get to spend their last moment of their existence together. Yeah, this show, look, I can tell when something is really good, it just evokes a lot of emotion, which is why I am fighting back tears because of just how well done it is. But there's so many little details in this episode that I didn't catch the first time. When the red protocol goes off for the first time, when Mark and Gemma's reunion, by the way, that was heartbreaking. Seeing Gemma, immediately her eyes recognize Mark, and then he just starts crying. Oh, it was so good. So I'm happy we finally got to see them reunited. This was such a huge relief. Like, I was very concerned they were not going to save her. I was like, they're gonna do something really mean. But this look that Helly gives when she recognizes a siren, um, that's another. You can tell she just smiles. She's happy that she now knows they were successful. But then her face kind of drops again. Why Helena wouldn't smile if Mark had rescued Gemma. Helly loves Mark and she wants him to be successful in rescuing his Audi's wife. So just seeing that real emotion of like, the smile and then the drop was just so subtle. The cast for the show is just absolutely incredible. Speaking of absolutely incredible, Milchick in this episode was great. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't get to see Milchick's redemption arc because I still don't know what the deal is for Milchick. I had this theory. I suspected that he might be a permanent innie, and he might still be. I don't know if he's Lumen brainwashed proper or if he's an innie that just didn't leave. But Milchick was just fantastic this episode. I love him so much. But I'm a little disappointed. I thought he was going to help the innies. I thought that was kind of what his resentment and his anger against Drummond and his frustrations with being micromanaged. I thought it was going to lead to this big switch for him where he decided to fight for the innies because he was taking a more progressive role with them this entire season, like seeming to giving them more privileges, taking them on the excursion. It seemed like he was trying to recognize them as their own individual separate beings more so than Cobell had. So him busting down the refrigerator and coming on and seeing Dylan in the marching band, like waiting for him though. And we got one last, fuck you, Mr. Milchick was so great. So I will take it. That was such a good moment. But overall, this episode was just entirely, it was so well done and heartbreaking. Now, what exactly is Cold Harbor that they were making Gemma disassemble the baby crib? I think what they were doing, so there's still a lot of questions to be answered. Like there's still so much room to explain what was going on, but I kind of think that they were putting Gemma through a series of different traumatic events, either trying to jumpstart a memory depending on the severity of the pain, or trying to remind her of things from her life to test the effectiveness of Severance. And Cold Harbor, they used the song, they used I'll Be Seeing You, which is like Mark and Gemma's song. And so having her take apart the baby crib and, from the Gemma episode that they were trying to conceive and she miscarried. And Mark in frustration is taking apart the crib. So they had this crib for the baby that they lost. And I feel like this was just the final, like, what's the most traumatic memory linked to Gemma's pain that we can put her through to see the effectiveness of the severance process and make sure there's no cracks. Like it is totally impermeable. Like your conscious is totally locked off. They were trying to put Gemma through this one final big traumatic event from her life, trying to remind her in different ways with the song and also with the baby crib to see if it would jumpstart a memory. And if she passed this test, then it was kind of like, oh, hooray, we finally found our new limit on how many times a person can get severed. Because we know they've been doing this to other individuals. Drummond said that they had killed a number of goats, which means that they've killed a number of the people they were experimenting on. And Gemma, I think this was just a new milestone, right? Mark said he had done 24 files, 25 including Cold Harbor, but Dylan and Irving and Helly could have been contributing to that number too. So we at least know she's been severed at least 25 times, but it could be more. So I think Cold Harbor was the culmination of it was like reaching the new number. How many times did we effectively sever an individual and put them through this many traumatic experiences, and they didn't remember a single thing, like nothing got in? But very interestingly, when Mark comes to rescue Gemma, when Mark Scout comes to rescue Gemma, and he's trying to remind her of their life together, he stops himself. He says, "We've been married for 4 years. We had a life together." And that's the dialogue. He says, "We were," and you'd expect him to say, "We were happy together." And I found it very interesting how he didn't go with that. He didn't finish that thought. He switched to, "We had a life together." And I mean, we saw the last interaction between Mark and Gemma. Their marriage had been strained because of the miscarriage and the effect that had on them together. So I'm very grateful though that they didn't do this cop out where Mark and Helly's relationship is more meaningful than Mark and Gemma's relationship. I'm so grateful they didn't do that. Like, both of these couples love each other the same amount. Their love is justified in each scenario. One couple isn't more deserving than the next. So I'm just really grateful that they didn't have to take the easy way out and, okay, well, I'm really rooting for one couple or the other. I'm really, really thankful we got to see Mark and Gemma reunite and that they love each other so much. And, the second they recognize each other, and this is their big reunion scene, we just get to see them like fully in love, embrace. He like can't stop kissing her. It was just such a sweet scene. I'm so grateful they were not mean about it, and they didn't take like an easy way out and make it, well, I'm clearly rooting for one couple or the other. Like, no, I wanted everyone to be happy, but it's just not possible in this universe because of the technology. I really want to kind of like, I might do a rewatch of like the entirety of this show because I feel like there's so much there. So many clues now that we know looking back. I'm sure things will pop out. But I just wanted to do a little discussion about this finale episode because I really can't remember being this affected by the end of a show this much to this extent. And this is one of the best shows I've ever seen. Just the way it was written, directed, but the cast for me is like the crown jewel. The cast is so freaking likable, and it is so rare where you have a show where every single character, well, apart from Mr. Drummond, screw that guy. By the way, that scene where Mark wakes up in the elevator holding the pneumatic gun to Drummond's neck and just like, that was perfect. It was really good. But everyone, even the antagonists like Cobell and Milchek, everyone's still likable. And to me, that's what really makes this show so special, is that I am completely rooting for every single cast member. I really hope we get to see Irving again, by the way. I'm so glad they brought back Dylan G, even just for a little bit of time. But I wish we'd gotten to see Irving this episode. So yeah, the lore, Lumen is such an interesting organization because while it is a very religiously based, this sort of typical cult where you buy into whatever the leader says and they have their own doctrine to follow, they are actively updating the the mythos of Lumen in real time. So when Mark comes to work and he sees this mural on the board with him in this very savior role, and you have all of the people in his life, the people that have affected him. You have the Lumen, you have Kier and the other mysterious entities up there. I love that they're updating the mythos and the story in real time now. I think I think there's something very particular about Mark Scout, like why they wanted him. This is my theory. Okay, so let's go back. The credits tell you so much about the story, by the way, that, like, for example, the at the end of the credits where it's zooming in on the elevator, it's switching back between Gemma and Helly in the elevator. And it's like, oh my gosh, they were like, it was right there all along that it would basically come down to a choice between Gemma and Helly in the elevator. So you can see that right there. They're switching back and forth. Like, they told us right there that that was what was going to be, and I still wouldn't have seen that coming. So I just, this intro, I never skip the intro, by the way. Like, I watch this intro start to finish. But in the intro, there is a baby. It is a baby of Kier, okay, right there. So this baby of Kier, I thought Mark Scout was this sort of, for whatever reason, the chosen one to birth the next Egan or to birth the next Kier. And that's why Helena wanted to sleep with him during the excursion, is because Helena wanted to become pregnant with Mark's baby. And so that is what I think that's. Oh, you can't even see it. I just realized. All right, there you go. That baby right there. Sorry, I didn't realize that it wasn't showing up on the screen. So I think this baby right here is like, that's got to do, it has to be something. So is this baby going to be like the chosen Messiah figure, and season 3 going to be having to deal with Mark Scout has a baby with Helena Egan? I don't know. I just think that there's enough to go off. Like, they've put things in season 2 that could absolutely be expanded on in season 3. I'm also extremely pleased with Cobell's story arc, because she could have easily just continued to remain this strict Lumen apologist and devotee, but her being screwed over by this organization that she's like been raised in, devoted her life to, they stole her Severance technology, her turning on Lumen and actually genuinely helping Devin and genuinely helping Mark, and ultimately trying to be the one to encourage him to go back and save Gemma. I loved that. I love when characters aren't one-dimensional and they're multifaceted. I never disliked Cobell. I thought she was freaking scary as heck. But Patricia Arquette's portrayal of her is just absolutely incredible. But I was very, very pleased to see that she had an active role in helping explain to Mark what was going on, and ultimately trying to encourage him to help Mark Scout and to get Gemma out of there. So I really think that we could be looking at a Gemma Cobell Devin team up for season 3, and to save Mark, because I'm not sure, is Lumen gonna hold him hostage? They don't really. They're such a powerful organization. They can make someone disappear, or they could kill him in there. I don't know. Or they can keep him hostage and experiment on him and split him into who knows how many innies. So yeah, I'm curious as to what her role will be in season 3. But the fact that she created the Severance technology and Egan stole it from her is just, it was such a cool twist to find out. She's a really, really interesting character. And I was just ultimately very pleased that she had such a change in her motivations, and she's not some blind loyalist. She's very, very loyal to Kier in season one, would do anything for Lumen. But I loved seeing that she's not just some brainwashed cultist. Like she has a lot of agency. So it was just really fun to see her change. So yeah, that pretty much wraps up my little discussion. I just wanted to share a couple thoughts and basically just talk about why this ending impacted me so much and how heartbreaking and beautiful it was, and how rare it has been to have media that is just so touching and so complex. And I'm just so grateful that I've got to experience this show. Like I'm alive during the time of Severance. It's such a well written story, and I'm just so grateful we are getting stories like this. I really hope we get to see more thought provoking shows that don't rely on the same typical, clear cut answer, but instead have you thinking about all the different possibilities and whatnot. It's just so beautifully done. So yeah, that's all, and I will see you later.